on.
Councillor Pena. Oh, she went away.
Madam Chair, we are now live.
Thank you, councilors. We are now live. We are being broadcast. So I call this meeting to order. This is the Land Use Planning and Zoning Committee of the City Council. All committees members are present or will soon be today via Zoom. This is a remote or online meeting where all participants will be on a video or audio conference. We appreciate your patience as LUPS meetings are conducted this way. Members of the public will be able to address the committee if they have signed up for live public comment per the rules published on the agenda and can't speak tonight, and on our website Friday. Speakers will be moved into the meeting room 2 at a time. They will remain muted with their camera off until they are called upon to speak, at which point they can turn on their camera, unmute themselves, and will have 2 minutes to provide comments to the committee. After that, they will again be muted and return to be an attendee of the Zoom webinar. Written comments were also received and distributed to the committee members in advance of the meeting. Members of the public, city staff, and the media have the ability to view this meeting live through YouTube and Zoom webinar. The live stream can be accessed from most smartphones, tablets, or computers. For those watching on the live stream, thank you for joining us. We will start with public comment, and hello to those joining us to provide public comment. Here are the public comment ground rules. Comments are to be addressed to the committee members only. Please keep your comments germane to the topics on the agenda. Any disruptive conduct or non-germane commentary will result in removal from the Zoom webinar. As usual, there'll be a 2-minute time limit. The timer will start once you begin speaking. Then the Zoom moderator, Mr. Moya, will let you know when your time is up. Mr. Moya, would you please call the name of the first speaker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first speaker is Jeanette Allen. Ms. Allen, please feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your 2 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Please proceed.
Good, thank you. So my name is Jeanette Allen. I'm a 15-year resident of Albuquerque and a 50-year landowner in northern New Mexico. I have a master's degree in biogeography. I just retired from a 40-year career as a science educator, the last 20 years with our federal space agency, NASA. I have seen what it takes to design, build, launch, manage, and decommission a NASA spacecraft. So I know competence and thoughtfulness when I see it. The Candelaria Nature Preserve's Resource Management Plan is exemplary for competence and thoughtfulness and for its visionary nature. A group of volunteers known as the Friends of Candelaria Nature Preserve was formed initially by members of the Technical Advisory Group as a means of community support. So our purpose is to support the city's open space division as it implements the resource management plan. I lead that Friends group. We know what an important place the Candelaria Nature Preserve is and how this treasure in the heart of Albuquerque will distinguish our city as the RMP is implemented. We are drafting an agreement with the Open Space Division to be submitted soon. We're also working with the OSD Superintendent of Education to design a plan for public nature study and wildlife-oriented recreation. We would like to emphasize that improved ecosystem health and increased biodiversity of the CNP are of the utmost importance. The excitement and magic of public opportunities for nature study and wildlife-oriented recreation will stem from the richness of that protected and rewilded landscape. Thank you for your support of the RMP.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Peggy Norton. Ms. Norton, feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your 2 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
I urge your support of the RMP as it represents 5 years of effort to write a plan to comply with LWCF guidelines and the original purchase intent. Two concerns expressed at the first meeting at Arbor Road were herbicide use, which was not allowed on the fields, and fields with no plantings. I want to thank Michael Jensen, Councillor Benton, and Brian Hansen for their leadership roles in making this plan a reality, as well as Colleen Mcroberts. This plan brings together some very exciting environmental concepts: healthy soils, reduced water consumption, rewilding, and increased biodiversity from a mosaic of native habitats, with access being primarily visual. In the middle of a city of over 500,000 people, the transition will allow observation of the process, which is experimental, and there will be trial and error. We have had great financial support and enthusiasm from our state legislators, Bill O'Neill and Deborah Armstrong, and also the city. Amendment recommendations: a method to resolve ambiguities, interpretations of the plan. Reduce the goal of full habitat conversion from 12 years to 8 years. Delete the option for parks to use the tree nursery for green waste and other material. Clarify that school groups of 60 people would be split between the Nature Center and Candelaria Nature Preserve. Special events should not include the allowed group tours. Set a goal date for removal of the asphalt pad. Herbicide use is a concern of mine and others. Because IPM allows herbicides, perhaps only OMRI designated products could be allowed. I am pleased to see the organic focus of Ciudad Soil and Water District overseeing the transition of some of the fields, and Colleen Mcroberts is backing that concept. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brian Hansen. Please feel free to turn your video back on, unmute yourself, and your 2 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Please proceed.
Okay. I'm Brian Hansen. I'm the chairman of the Technical Advisory Group, TAG, a volunteer group that met for several years to write a resource management plan for Candelaria Nature Preserve. The original intent of the 171 acres was for a wildlife preserve, which included the Rio Grande Nature Center State Park. Recently, it was learned that management of the land did not comply with the Land and Water Conservation Fund requirements. This new plan meets all requirements and will ensure that wildlife is the priority, but also includes public viewing, nature study, and environmental education. In New Mexico, riparian and wetland habitats have been reduced from 1 million acres to 482,000 acres, a reduction of 52%. This preserve will give back some of those acres to wildlife. The plan includes establishing the various wildlife habitats found along the Rio Grande. These habitats will support an abundance of species that can be viewed by the public. The TAG team included about 15 members with another 15 supporting experts. During our 49 TAG meetings, we always started the meeting with time for the public to speak. Visits to other refuges and invited specialists at the meetings added to the expertise of the resource management plan. The city hired experienced consultants to put the plan together. The RMP has been approved by Albuquerque Parks and Rec, Open Space Advisory Board, and the Environmental Planning Commission. The TAG looks forward to the day when the city of Albuquerque proudly advertises that the city has a wildlife preserve within the city limits. This sets our city apart from other large cities and demonstrates to all that Albuquerque values the natural environment and its wildlife. Please approve the plan, and thank you for your work on this committee. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Sean Luden. Mr. Luden, please feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your 2 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Hello, committee. Thanks for the opportunity to share. My name is Sean Ludden. I'm Programs Coordinator for Ciudad Soil and Water Conservation District. and I'm project manager for this transition under the RMP with contract under the City of Open Space. I wish to express support from the Ciudad Soil and Water Conservation District for the CMP RMP, which represents a well-planned and thorough vision for the restoration of habitat on Candelaria Nature Preserve. I view this as an unparalleled opportunity for the city of Albuquerque, its residents, and the region as a whole to encourage the prioritization of wildlife habitat within city limits. CSWCD is excited to work with the city in this effort and initiate transition from commercial agriculture use to a truly unique preserve in which wildlife and biodiversity are enhanced through the introduction of native plants and habitat features. Further, this RMP will initiate benefits from carbon sequestration from planned undisturbed native vegetation, develop recreational opportunities in nature study, encourage educational approaches to engage public and youth, and also encourage refinement of these strategies to implement work of this kind at other sites as potential positive outcomes. CSWCD supports the CNP RMP and sees this as a wonderful chance to provide even more open space enjoyment for residents and wildlife alike within our district. Current progress includes seeding wildlife farming fields with a diverse seed mix, which includes native species, and utilizing available irrigation to recharge soil moisture in key fields. Other areas are in the progress of planning approaches amidst this ongoing record drought, and progress in these areas will likely take place later in the summer into winter with contractor services and community volunteer involvement. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Steve Ewing. Please feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your time will begin when you start speaking. Mr. Ewing, you are still muted. If you could unmute yourself.
Is this better?
There you go. Please proceed. Thank you.
I apologize. My name is Steve Ewing. I live adjacent to the tree farm of the Candelaria Nature Preserve. My comments are directed to the tree farm aspect of that. The tree farm area of this plan was predetermined before the adjoining neighbors were advised and knew of this. The Open Space Advisory Board on January 28th, 20 acknowledged that our neighbors were left out of the tree farm planning. I would request an oversight committee be added to the plan. Number two, the area is still not cleaned up. It needs to be cleaned up for the safety of families, children, and visitors. The language that I would like added as an amendment is the language that the EPC recommended on 12/10/20 in their findings. Under 16E, trash and other waste materials shall be forbidden from the tree nursery. 16H, the commission questions the appropriateness of uses like refuse transfer, green waste transfer, and landscape material trash at the tree farm site, which is in direct contact with 3 residential neighborhoods. Furthermore, noise, dust, and odors are a concern. It would be appropriate for Parks Department to indicate in the plan that these are not to be done at this site. There are other sites in the city that are more appropriate for this kind of use. I would respectfully request that be added to the language of the resource management plan. Lastly, until this area is cleaned up, and we've been trying for years to do it, it will not be safe for families, visitors, or any other people coming to the tree farm. It is part of the Candelaria Nature Preserve. It should be treated like open space. The city shouldn't be allowed to have sometimes trash there, huge trash. You can see from the photos I submitted earlier, and it needs to be cleaned up immediately. I would request that that be added too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ewing. Our next speaker is Cameron Weber. Please feel free to turn your video back on, unmute yourself, and your 2 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Okay, thank you. My name's Cameron Weber, and I serve as the Conservation Director for Rio Grande Return. We're an environmental nonprofit protecting New Mexico's wetlands and riparian waterways, tributaries to the Rio Grande. And our work focuses on just this kind of work where we're converting often degraded agricultural lands, often public wildscapes, into valuable habitat in partnership with the community. We're under contract with the City of Albuquerque and Ciudad Soil and Water Conservation District to assist with this conversion. Sorry for the noise. I'm wanting to register our support, Rio Grande Return's support, as well as my own personal support for the RMP to move forward to a city council approval, because this RMP includes aspects that are necessary for the kind of flexibility that is needed for this kind of large scale conversion, but also provides a very sound scientific background for the design. I urge the commission to move the RMP forward as it is. I am on the ground regularly on the Candelaria Nature Preserve as of the last couple of months, and have been engaged with the process since it started early on, and have watched the level of community engagement around this, and feel that the lessons that the community has brought forward have been incorporated to a great degree, and the tools that are available to us allow us to start making real progress on the RMP as it is. So I urge you to accept the RMP and move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Taja Young. Ms. Young, please feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your time will begin when you start speaking.
Good afternoon, counselors. Can you hear me? Yes. I am Tasha Young, and I am Vice Chair of the City of Albuquerque Open Space Advisory Board. And as one of the previous speakers said, the Open Space Board did vote in January of 2020 to support the management plan. I believe that was a unanimous vote. We have just two specific concerns. One is that we do have oversight responsibility for this plan, and we look forward to continued reports so that we can maintain our advisory status with you. The second concern is that we have, as you have heard, continuous and serious complaints about the status of the tree farm, and so we would like to have that issue be resolved as soon as that's possible. Thank you, counselors.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Barbara Taylor. Ms. Taylor, please feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your time will begin when you start speaking. Ms. Taylor, you are muted. If you can unmute yourself there.
There we go. I think, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Barbara Taylor. I'm a member of the Open Space Advisory Board. I'm here primarily to answer questions because I have the longest institutional memory of this project, apart from the neighbors who participated. I do want to say that I strongly support the proposal by Peggy Norton. I thought her amendments were great, with just one exception. IPM, integrated pest management, is the standard of care all over the state, whether it's Valle de Oro, Bosque del Apache. It does allow a certain amount of use of herbicide, but it minimizes the use of herbicide and really provides a comprehensive framework for the care of the property. But I'm basically here today in case any questions come up about the history of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Our next speaker is Oscar Simpson. Mr. Simpson, please feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your time will begin when you start speaking. If you can just unmute yourself, Mr. Simpson.
All right.
There.
Thank you very much. Oscar Simpson. I'm a North Valley resident. I attended most of the meetings in the development of the resource management plan for Candelaria Farms. I support the resource management plan. My key issue is I want to make sure that the tree farm is utilized for access to the preserve, but also for the ditch accesses. So that needs to be a primary concern for a lot of the public. There's limited access and parking in that whole area, and that's a critical area that needs to be developed and utilized for public access. And the tree farm needs to get all this junk and trash out of there. And as I understand and addressed that we were developing plans and actions on how and what size and what the details are for the Candelaria, for the tree farm. That's all I have to say, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Our next speaker is Joe Almers. Mr. Almers, please feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your 2 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Joe Almers. I'm a resident of the Alvarado Gardens neighborhood, and I like to say I'm in support of the CMP. I hope that the CMP will be providing off-street parking for all of its visitors. Currently, we have two major attractions in our neighborhood. One of them is the Rio Grande Nature Preserve. The other is we have two access points to the bosque within our neighborhood. And because of those two attractions, our neighborhood has seen increased traffic, increased speeding, and increased parking in our neighborhood streets. I hope that the city will provide off-street parking for existing attractions and for any future outdoor attractions in our neighborhood and throughout the city as they develop, so that we can keep the quality of our neighborhoods intact. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Diana Hunt. Ms. Hunt, please feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your time will begin when you start speaking.
Hello. Thanks for having me today. My name is Diana Hunt. I've been a resident of the Alvarado Gardens Neighborhood Association for the last 15 years, and I am the current president of that association. AGNA, as it's known for short, is adjacent to the southern boundary of the CNP. Similar to Joe Almers, my concerns today revolve around parking for our neighborhood. And I understand that there are the limitations imposed by the LWCF, and I may have gotten those initials wrong, but I think y'all know what I mean. And those limitations previously did not exist. I believe the TAG group did a fantastic job of drafting a plan that exists today, but not much attention was given to addressing where off-street parking would exist for the new needs of this public amenity. I believe the tree farm to be a likely spot for this off-street parking. I am sympathetic to the wishes of Steve Ewing. I certainly understand that that area needs to be cleaned up, but in my mind, it does make the most sense to provide parking there. If there is going to be, if there are going to be group tours from off the Doranis, off the ditch there, and access to a viewing area, access to the Woodward House. The CNP is huge. My other consideration has always been that I don't understand why all of the access, viewing, and parking should be to the south of that property. So I ask that there be some consideration for access to the CNP from potentially the north side or as I understand it, there will be some viewing access
Thank you,
along
Ms. Hunt.
the
Your
drainage.
time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Eleanor Walther. Ms. Walther, please feel free to turn your video on, and your time will begin when you start speaking.
Councilors, my name is Eleanor Walther, and I'm president of the Rio Grande Boulevard Neighborhood Association. There are many things we like about the resource management plan for the Candelaria Nature Preserve. We do have some concerns, however. We oppose use of herbicides and pesticides at the CNP. About 5 years ago, when herbicides were used, bird populations decreased and the spraying had an effect on surrounding properties. We support a neighborhood oversight committee to provide direct community input to the management of the CNP. The plan states that there will be minimal use of herbicides, but does not define what minimal means. We would like community input whenever herbicides are being considered for use. We support a plan to return the preserve to natural habitat sooner than 12 years. We also have great concerns about future development plans for the tract known as the tree farm. The tract of land borders neighborhood residential properties on 3 sides. Currently, the tract is used for storage of vegetative refuse from city parks. This violates New Mexico state statutes. The Parks Department has been unwilling to commit to a timetable for cleaning this up, even though neighbors have been trying for years to remove this dumped refuse. The tree farm is also a staging area for construction materials for the Parks and Recreation Department. Unfortunately, this does not violate state statutes, but we think this is an inappropriate use for this property. We also have reservations about plans for the tree farm. We have heard there are plans to build buildings, bathrooms, lighting, and parking on this property. We do hope that the Open Space Division will give more than lip service to the neighbors' concerns and develop a plan that is acceptable to the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Jonathan Siegel. Mr. Siegel, please feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your time will begin when you start speaking.
Good afternoon. I'm Jonathan Siegel. I live also in Alvarado Gardens within a block of the proposed Candelaria Nature Preserve. Today I speak to the RMP for the preserve. I've been assisting our neighborhood, Alvarado Gardens, which abuts the CNP, in trying to solve parking problems. Many of our residents want to find ways to reduce on-street parking burdens. Although I personally do not find on-street parking to be a problem, many of our neighbors do find it a problem and have variously considered permit-only parking. To extrapolate, if permit-only parking were to be in place, visitors from around town and out of town would not be able to access the Candelaria Nature Preserve, nor the bosque, the bike trail, and related amenities. We think these assets should have public access. If the CNP wants visitors, they need to consider accommodating them and their inevitable vehicles in the most unobtrusive way possible. Do not count on-street neighborhood parking as primary public parking. I do not favor lighted parking lots nor additional restrooms. We would urge the city to continue to work with affected neighborhoods to minimize these burdens. And I sent you also some suggested added language, which reads as follows at page 104 and again at page 109 and possibly elsewhere. Words to the effect of, the city agrees to provide adequate off-street parking for planned activities and casual viewing activities. Under no circumstances will the city add a parking lot off Veranda Road to the north to encroach into the resource area. That's about it for that. I stand for questions. I do hope you'll take these matters into consideration. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Siegel. Our next speaker is Jennifer Owen White. Ms. White, please feel free to turn your video on. There you are. Your 2 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Owen White. I am the refuge manager for the Valle de Oro National Wildlife Refuge in the South Valley, and I appreciate this time to address the committee today. I wanted to let you know that Valle de Oro National Wildlife Refuge has collaborated with the City of Albuquerque Open Space and the Candelaria Nature Preserve Technical Advisory Group on the research and writing of the Candelaria Nature Preserve Resources Management Plan. We have shared information based on our resource management planning at Valle de Oro, the process that we followed to create our own site plan. And moving forward, we commit to continuing to work with the Albuquerque Open Space and Candelaria Nature Preserve to bring the vision that Open Space, the Technical Advisory Group, and the community have had to life. We look forward to continuing to share resources back and forth as we each practice adaptive management in our work and as we learn from the work that is done at each of our sites. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, that concludes public comments.
Thank you, Mr. Moyo, and thank you everyone who took the time to come speak with us and enlighten us in many ways. We are now going to be moving on to agenda item A, EC 370, and Councilor Borrego, we'll move to you for this.
Thank you, Councilor, Madam Chair. I would like to make a motion that we accept Dennis F. Armijo for the position of the Planning Commission. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about him once I get a second, Councilor.
Councilor Borrego, may I say something before we since this is slowed down a little bit, let's make it clear to the public that we're discussing EC 370, which is the mayor's appointment of Mr. Dennis F. Armijo Sr. to the Environmental Planning Commission. I will second that motion, your motion, Councilor Borrego.
Thank you, Councilor Jones. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Mr. Armijo. Mr. Armijo is an accomplished attorney from District 5. He has significant experience in patents, and he practiced law in the city of Albuquerque. He graduated from the University of New Mexico Law School, and he was also an adjunct professor at the university. So he also has worked extensively with Sandia National Laboratories in the engineering science fields of telemetry and pointing systems for sounding rocket programs. I'm really honored to have found this individual in my district, and I'm happy to support him to serve on the commission. And I believe, Councilor Jones and councilors, that or Madam Chair, that he is also with us, and he's prepared to speak if you'd like.
Thank you, Councilor Borrego. Are there any questions for council or staff or administration, for Councilor Borrego or the staff or administration? Councilor Benton?
Yes, I'd like to hear from Mr. Armijo and his interest in the position. I don't see him.
Hello. My name's Dennis Armijo. You have some questions for me?
Yeah, I just wanted to hear, your, what made you interested in the Planning Commission specifically, and also if you've been made aware of the time commitments that are involved with it.
I'll answer your second question first. Yes, I do know the time commitments, and I'm pretty much aware of it, and I'm ready to go ahead and proceed. The reason I'm doing this is I practiced law in fact, this is my 40th year, and I just retired. I like giving back to the community. I previously was a board member for Petroglyph Little League. In fact, we started Petroglyph Little League here many, many years ago. So this is not, I've been trying to do something for the community, and with my experience and my education, I felt this was a pretty good fit. I am not well-versed in zoning and planning or any of that kind of stuff right now, but I understand that there's a lot of courses that I could take through the city to catch me up. But I'm willing and able to participate.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Gibson, do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. So Mr. Armijo, so thank you. Thank you for volunteering, for raising your hand and standing up for this. This is probably, my guess is this would be one of two of the toughest committees to be on, volunteer committees that the city has. The other one that comes to mind is the Police Oversight Board, which takes a lot of arrows over there. And so this is really heavy land use things. And, typically we had, I was so naive when I came on council. I thought environmental protection. Oh, well, there must be a lot of environmentalists on there. No, not so much. They're, people who are, looking at the regulations that the city has in place, and other regulations, I'm sure, too, and looks at prospective projects, and they do other things too, I'm sure of. I've never even been to I've been to one meeting. I take that back. So, but you know what I think might help is that you are an attorney. Even if you haven't done land use in the past, that actually might be in your favor. So I wish you well. And I think that the fact that you said that you're I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember exactly your words, something about would work hard at it and can learn things. So I think that will also go to your favor. But I appreciate you, and I admire the fact that you are willing to take this on, because this isn't a small thing at all. It's rather big. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Any other questions or comments? If not, I will say just a little bit. I think, sir, that this is a very daunting committee. It is very detailed and has to do with a great deal of the planning, development, and the future of the city. So are you prepared to put in the multitude of hours that it takes to work with this one? I've been told sometimes they're sequestered for 2 or 3 days at a time to work on things, especially when we're updating different, especially the IDO, things like that. Is that something that will work within your lifestyle at this point?
Yes, it certainly will.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, councilors? Councilor
Madam Chair, thank you. I was, one of the things that struck me when I was reviewing Mr. Armijo's background was he has a strong background of working with clients ranging from startup companies to established high-tech companies. And, with many of the recent LEDA projects and projects that we've worked on with the state, I think that, his background is very well suited. So I just urge your support, councilors.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Any other comments? With that, oh yes, Councilor Benton.
Yeah, just to be clear, I neglected to read this last part of the staff write-up that wasn't aware that that the membership was written this way, but it reads as, at least according to the staff write-up, one resident per city council district with experience in community planning, architecture, landscape architecture, urban design, real estate development, transportation, civil engineering, and/or real estate finance. And I think sounds like a pretty limited list. Could I ask staff, is that the way the enabling legislation reads? Or is that paraphrased?
Madam Chair, Councilor Benton, I'm pretty sure that text is taken directly from the IDO, but I was going to take a moment to pull that up to confirm.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't aware of that language, but that's very specific language.
If you'll bear with us, we'll make, is there anyone else that'd like to make a comment before Ms. Schultz comes up with her information for us?
I would.
I must say, yes, Councilor Gibson.
Madam Chair, I just noticed that Catalina Lair's hand went up, and
hi.
I would like to hear from her, please.
There we go. Thank you so much, Councilor Gibson.
Councilor Gibson, that is very unusual. This is a committee meeting and we've already taken public comment. So sorry, Catalina. Oh, your city staff. Excuse me, I don't know everybody anymore. Go ahead, Catalina. So sorry.
Thank you very much. No worries, Councilor Jones. My name is Catalina Lehner. I am the Senior Planner for Current Planning Staffing EPC since 2005. I also serve as the Director's Designee for Wireless Matters since 2006. Thank you. So yes, I believe that the language in the IDO is written as such. However, I believe that as long as the person has the appropriate type of experience to serve on a land use and planning board, that is indeed what is intended and is looking for. And in the past, there have been attorneys who have served on the EPC. And it's actually preferable, I believe, because of the amount of regulations that we look at applying to each of the cases.
Madam Chair, may I follow up with a question, please?
You certainly may, Councilor Gibson.
Thank you. So, Ms. Lehner, did those previous members of EPC who were attorneys, did they have other background or education in any of those disciplines that were just read off associated with EPC?
Councilors and Councilor Gibson, one was a former federal attorney, and I believe his service on the EPC was very effective and informative. The other also had some experience in land development.
Okay, so the federal attorney may or may not have any background in land use, planning, zoning, development. Is that correct?
Councilor Gibson and members of the committee, that is correct. However, I believe his service was effective because we do look at a number of regulations that have to be applied. And of course, there are matters of policy. And being specifically well-versed in land use, planning and zoning and application of policies and regulations is often a lot of it. It's important to have related experience, but there's not that many people that have exact experience. It's more something that's learned on the job. I mean, I think if the provision was written very specifically, it would, be looking at finding retired urban planners perhaps, but I think it's very important to kind of broaden that and just have experience that is related, because a lot of it is learned on the job, actually. And we do typically offer trainings to the EPC and new members to kind of onboard them. And that's something that would be possible in the future.
Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you mention engineers in that list also? Engineering and architecture and planning? Is that what you said earlier?
Madam Chair, Councilor Borrego, yes. Again, the list reads as experience in community planning, architecture, landscape architecture, urban design, real estate development, transportation, civil engineering, and or real estate finance.
I would just offer that this gentleman has a bachelor's degree in science in engineering. So I'm not really sure what maybe we need to look at in the future, because I don't think that we're trying to be, we're trying to exclude attorneys. But I think this candidate is very well qualified. And apparently the mayor agrees with me. So I would like to just make that my closing remark.
Thank you for that, but I believe Councilor Pena has her hand up and would like to say something before you close. Councilor Pena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I just want to say that, I'd be more than happy to support Mr. Armijo as part of the EPC. I served on the EPC for a short time, a long time ago, and it's a very interesting process. And it really, I think you have probably a ton more experience of what I did when I served on the board. So I'd like to welcome you. I think that we need a more diverse board on the EPC. From what it appears that there are no other women on this board, and this would looks like there's only one other person of color. So I would look forward to the increased diversity as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Pena. Any other comments? Ms. Montoya, we need a vote. Mrs. Montoya, would you please call the roll?
Councilor Benton,
Yes.
Councilor Borrego,
Yes.
Councilor Gibson,
Yes.
Councilor Pena,
Yes.
and Councilor Jones.
Yes.
And that passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. Congratulations, sir.
Thank
Now
you.
you only have one more, you only have full council to go to now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Let's move on to agenda item B, EC 378. This is the 2021 Albuquerque Climate Action Plan, and I move receipt be noted.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Councilors, any questions for staff or the administration? Seeing no questions, does staff, would the administration like to make a presentation?
Madam Chair, I do see Kelsey Rader here from the City Sustainability Office, who was in charge of developing the Climate Action Plan. I see she's turned on her camera. She might have a few words to say about this plan.
Thank you, Ms. Schultz. Ms. Rader, do you have something to say, or would you like to sit there and just have us ask you questions? What's your will tonight?
Good afternoon, Councilor Jones and councilors. Thank you so much for having me. We previously had myself, Director Ryan Mast, and several members of the Climate Action Task Force present to you all just about a month ago on the May 17th meeting. However, if you would like to have some additional points, I'm certainly happy to make those, but otherwise happy to just take questions, considering that we have previously spoken with you about it recently.
Thank you. Councilors, any questions? Councilor Benton.
Yeah, no, just no question. Just wanted to thank Ms. Rader and everyone who worked on this and everyone who participated in the process. It was interesting. I sponsored the original bill to take another look at our old climate action plan from the good old days of 12 years ago. And so it was really nice to see it evolve. And I just want to thank everyone who was part of that. And Ms. Rader, of course, is doing a great job as our sustainability manager. So hats off to her.
Thank you, Councilor Benton. Any other comments? In that case, I believe Mrs. Montoya, if you would take the roll, please.
Councilor Benton,
Yes.
Councilor Borrego,
Yes.
Councilor Gibson,
Yes.
Councilor Pena,
Yes.
and Councilor Jones.
Yes.
That passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. And congratulations to The climate out to the mayor. Okay, we're going on to C. Counselor Benton, this is R171 concerning the future management of Candelaria Nature Preserve. Counselor Benton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'll move A, do pass on R21-171. This is the management of the Candelaria Nature Preserve and the approval of the resource management plan for that nature preserve.
I will second that.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I think we have Colleen Mcroberts here from our open space superintendent. And of course, we heard from quite a few people who either served on the technical advisory group. This is another, well, this is something I had something to do with at the beginning of putting forth the technical advisory group and kind of setting this plan in motion. And it's been a lot of work over 5 years. I want to thank that group, including some people who spoke, Chair Brian Hansen. I believe Ms. Norton was a member of it, Michael Jensen, David Parsons, and Carolyn Siegel. I don't know if I missed anybody. If I did, I apologize. But they really put in a tremendous amount of work on this, as did of course, open space and parks staff and consultants. And I'd like to hear from Ms. Mcroberts, but and then the Open Space Advisory Board, who gave it due consideration, as they mentioned, as their representatives mentioned, and would like to stay involved, of course, and we would hope that they would stay involved in observing how progress moves along. But I'll turn it over to Colleen Mcroberts if she would like to speak and give a presentation.
Good evening, Ms. McRoberts. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and councilors. I'm thrilled to be before you all today and present this plan because it has been a long time in the making. If it is okay with you all, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and do a presentation. I will try to make it as succinct and short as possible. I also didn't know if Shanna Schultz wanted to introduce anything as well, so I'll just put that out there.
Madam Chair, Councilor Benton, I suspect that Ms. McRoberts will be covering a lot of what I would have opened up with. I'll just say that this effort came out of a resolution passed in 2016 by the council to relook at how the property was being managed. It was potentially not being managed in compliance with some of the funding that was originally received to acquire the property. So this long planning effort began. The most recent iteration of the plan before you tonight was recommended for approval by both the Open Space Advisory Board and then later on the Environmental Planning Commission, who had 2 hearings on the matter and recommended approval in January of this year. I will leave it to Ms. McRoberts to get into the technical aspects of the plan and tell you more about what the plan itself does.
Thank you, Ms. Schultz. Ms. McRoberts, are you ready?
I am.
Thank you.
One moment here. Okay. And I will try to make this short. So just to orientate you and to let you know that we have identified 4 distinct areas within the Candelaria Nature Preserve. The area that you all are probably the most familiar with is the Rio Grande Nature Center, identified here, including on this little south tract. But we also have about 100 acres of farmland, which includes part of a wetlands. We have about 7 acres known as the Tree Nursery Tract that's right off of Rio Grande Boulevard and has been managed by Park Management for about 4 decades now. And then we have the South Tract as well that is fenced off, so most people don't go here, but there is a discovery pond that's managed by the Nature Center, and kids go there to learn all about wetlands. So as mentioned, and so I won't belabor this, but we purchased this property, the city did, in 1978, and part of the funding did come from land and water conservation funds, which has stipulations in perpetuity about how the property will be managed. We had managed that property for 4 decades thinking we were in compliance, but upon further investigation from the state liaison officer at the time, she identified that there were some areas that we needed to look at and that we weren't in compliance. and that kicked off the effort to develop the resource management plan that was mandated through the 2 resolutions that you see there. The resolutions also stated a somewhat bit of an unusual planning process that's not very typical, which is that the Open Space Advisory Board would lead the planning process rather than city staff, and they would convene a technical advisory group who would then work with staff, and we also hired consultants at some point just to move the planning process along. The resource management plan does address the 2 major issues of compliance, which is providing outdoor recreation, as well as looking at our farming practices. So we are going to completely revamp that as well. And I will tell you about that. But before I do, I just want to emphasize what an extensive planning process this was. So a number of people have said 5 years, 49 meetings, and it's true, this was very extensive. So it started in 2017 and it went all the way to 2020. People were meeting weekly, monthly, if not weekly at some times, and there were additional stakeholder meetings. There were discovery hikes on the property that were open to the public. We had 3 major public meetings. And then in addition to that, we had surveys. We had a whole website that was developed for this process so that we could keep things posted on there, and it still is actively used. And then it was eventually voted on by the technical advisory group to approve the plan. And it went to the Open Space Advisory Board where they unanimously voted to approve the plan. And just recently it went to EPC, who after a couple of meetings and some revisions voted to recommend the plan be approved by you all. And so here we are. So what is all the fuss about? Well, it is pretty exciting. Really a bold new vision has been conceptualized for this property, where what people want to do, what is outlined, is how to transition all that farmland into this dynamic patch mosaic of wildlife habitat, really optimizing the amount of wildlife and the diversity that we're able to support on this property, which of course is really important because we've had diminishing wildlife for a long time through the bosque, as we've channelized the river, we've drained wetlands and all sorts of things over the years. So this habitat, the diversity of habitat, is super critical, and land managers are always talking about how to create this dynamic patch mosaic of habitat that includes things like grasslands and shrublands and various different types of bosque type vegetation, more wetlands. So this is, all this is online, I'll just mention again, but this is kind of a look at how things were last year, where most of the property was being managed for alfalfa and wildlife crops. And that alfalfa was sold by a contract farmer who then was able to help us offset the cost for managing the property and then grow the wildlife crops. The transition that we're going to be moving towards is no longer growing alfalfa commercially or for sale, to help do that offset. Rather, we are going to be continuing to do wildlife cropping in this transition phase, but specific just for wildlife. And then other fields, we are going to continue to transition into more native habitat. And that includes a very long laundry list within the resource management plan of the specific types of plants we're going to try to cultivate there. And we're also going to be increasing our wetlands significantly to 20 acres, which is really exciting. Eventually, we hope in the 20-year plan to get to a point where we actually are not doing any wildlife cropping, but the entire property has been converted to native habitat of a variety of different sources. So the specific goal for this plan is to manage the property for its dual purpose of a nature study area that serves wildlife and provide compatible public outdoor recreation opportunities. That word compatible is important. This is a 20-year adaptive management plan, which is also really critical because the environment is changing and we don't, this is a huge task. We're taking land that has been cultivated for years for farming and trying to transition that back to something more native is actually a very difficult task and will take time. And the adaptive management allows a strategy that takes into consideration unique environmental factors that we can't even begin to fathom right now, and allows us to tweak things. So every 4 years, we'll really review where we're at, what successes we've made, how we need to tweak things to meet that ultimate goal. We also, as in that resolution, it states we'll be providing reports on an annual basis and presentations to the Open Space Advisory Board. We're committed to continuing to work very closely with the Friends Group and Habitat Council, and very importantly, two really important partners, sister sites, Valle de Oro and the Whiteville Conservation Area, who are doing similar things along the Rio Grande Valley, which is transitioning farmland to habitat. So I'm so grateful we have these amazing partners. The cost for doing this over the next 20 years is about $9 million. The hope would be to get the majority of that money initially so that we can really ramp up what we're trying to do here and meet this goal sooner than later. The budget does break down what we're looking at both through capital and maintenance management expenses and staffing. The other big part of this plan, of course, is recreation per that LWCF requirement. So there were two alternatives that were provided to the public through the planning process, which was a more increased or limited access. Limited access won the day and was voted on by the technical advisory group. And so that means we're not opening the gates there and allowing people to, saunter in whenever they want. Rather, we will only be doing guided tours. We'll be involving the citizens, or people through citizen science and restoration projects, and we will need a lot of people to support us in doing both of those things. And we're also doing wildlife blinds around the perimeter of the property so that people can have a limited but still an immersive experience. So these blinds, how they're being designed right now, is entering more a little bit into the property, and it's pretty exciting. So we've been going through that planning process recently. This is kind of a drawing that shows what that is. So these little purple binoculars are showing where public access already exists. We did that for LWCF to show them that, this is what's already existing. So there is a blind here, for example, at the Rio Grande Nature Center. And while this is not a blind, it's a popular viewing area along the Duranus Lateral that is on the east side of the property. So these little yellow markers, and this doesn't really dictate exactly where these might be, but is showing that we are, part of this planning process identified that we wanted these various, I just lost my mouse there. These various viewing blinds along the perimeter. Again, we have been doing the planning process, and we're now in design for the blinds that will be on the west and east side. We're going to continue to revisit the one on Veranda because there were still a lot of questions about that one. And then we'll be doing the red trail, shows you where we're formalizing a trail. And then we're also doing a viewing platform here. And then we have identified the tree nursery tract to be an area where people can park and walk to access the viewing blinds as well as the property for guided tours, rather than having people come and park directly into the preserve. And that was done to really limit the effects of too many cars and people in the preserve and that impact to wildlife. Though, we do know there were still lots of things that we needed to consider with the tree nursery tract planning. So we will engage in that planning process once the resource management plan is approved and already have somebody on contract to do that. We have a wonderful website, again, that has all of these things. It has the wildlife blinds. You can view the public meetings and the conceptual plans there. We've been able to complete a wetland conceptual design that is also there available, and a whole bunch of other stuff that's listed here. So we will continue to maintain that website so that we can present the information from the past, the current, and the future to the public, and continue to really just, involve them and let them know what we're doing and the progress that we're making. We are really, we hope that you will approve this plan. And just as it is presented to you all, knowing that it has had extensive public input and that there were revisions addressing a number of the concerns that were expressed during the EPC hearings, and the current plan represents those. The Open Space Division is committed to working with the community and partners to realize this plan and the bold vision that has been set forth in the resource management plan. So thank you for your time. I stand for questions. And again, I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Counselors, are there any questions? Counselor Borrego and then Counselor Gibson.
Thank you, Colleen, for that detail of your plan. My question is related to acequias in this area. Are there, I didn't hear any mention of the acequias, and I know that it's really an important element of the valley. I used to live in this area, by the way, so I'm very familiar with this area. I used to walk, I used to bike, and so I'm just wondering, was there input from, is there an acequia association? Was there input from them regarding the plan? How do we sort of balance that historical, sort of development of this area with the acequias and the uses that you're promoting as part of this plan?
Madam Jones, Counselor Borrego, thank you so much for that question. Because yes, I got before I worked with the city, I worked for the county for a long time and was very much involved with the Acequia Association there as well as in the East Mountains. So I definitely think that this is a very wonderful and unique part of Albuquerque and how things are managed, and has a great story to tell. And so the Duranis lateral is in between the Candelaria North tract and the Tree Nursery tract. And the viewing blind that we are developing there, and we are coordinating that, of course, with MRGCD, will have interpretive signs within the viewing blind. And one of the things that we have talked about recently is including information about the acequia and the amazing history specific to the Duranis lateral. So we will definitely be doing that. We have not been directly engaged with the Acequia Association in that area, so that is a really great comment and something that we will do as we continue to do the interpretive signage. We are working, however, with the budding Candelaria Friends group, who a number of them are very interested in doceting and interpretation. And so we will be working closely with them as well in developing the interpretive signs, and then in an interpretive program that they can help us, they can help be the docents for.
And Counselor Benton, and I know this is in your district, and Colleen, I would strongly encourage having some contact with the Acequia Association, and as you develop that, as you call it, panel, that they be a part of this, and that balance occur, because Candelaria, the whole history of Candelaria is very unique within itself. And so I mean, if you go back and you look at the Candelarias and the people who settled this area, there's a whole slew of very defined history. So I would strongly encourage that. The other question that I have is with regard to the Rio Grande itself, and a lot of the trees that are sort of going away because they're aging, and how some of those are being balanced to bring them back, because I know that there is a group that works with the flood control agency that is working specifically to ensure that as our trees are aging and kind of dying off, that they're replenishing that sort of ecosystem, which, so I would strongly encourage you to maybe reach out to Jerry Lovato and find out the name. I can't think of the name right off the top of my head, but I think it's really important to our whole ecosystem for that area, and not just that area, but the entire Rio Grande. So with those comments, I'd like to see that in the final plan if possible.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Counselor Borrego, if I may just go on a very short tangent and tie it to Candelaria. which is one of the exciting things about a project like Candelaria, is that we can do some real research. So it's not just about the cottonwoods senescing, aging out, but it's also about the water table dropping and issues with climate change that are affecting the bosque. And it will very well look different in the future. So a place like Whitfield and Valle de Oro and Candelaria allow us to learn things and do some experiments in a more controlled environment. And there's a lot of conversations going on right now about the different genotypes of cottonwoods and really honing in on which ones are more resilient and that we can plant in the bosque, and really using science as a way to tackle this enormous problem that we have before us. And so that's a potential that we have, to help solve some of these difficult issues through this amazing project that we're presenting before you.
And one other thing that I didn't hear you mention was the Water Utility Authority, because I believe they have a reclamation center right close by. And is that being considered as part of your dynamics in this area?
Yes, Madam Chair, Councilor Borrego, we are working with the Water Authority on a number of projects within the bosque. Who is more of a potential partner from the standpoint of the wetlands in this area is the Department of Transportation. Our hope is, that was a big ticket item to do this resource management plan, to materialize it. We're looking at ways to offset those costs. One of the ways would potentially be to work with the Department of Transportation to actually construct our 20-acre wetlands that's being proposed. And that would be amazing. So, we hope to see something like that happen in the near future.
And Madam Chair, just one last comment. This is a very, the approach you're taking is very impressive. But I think that there are some things that I would like to really see in the final plan, because it's important that we balance not only, sort of the indigenous cultures that this area developed, partly because, and the future of the area. So, you have a tall task ahead of you.
Thank you, Councilor Gibbs or Councilor Borrego. Councilors, are there any other questions? Councilor Gibson, do you have a question still? No.
No, but thank you. Let me just say that, I think this is great. I know it's a long time coming, and thank you for all the work you have put in it. And I'm very happy to support this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Gibson. Any other questions or comments? Councilor Borrego, would you like to close this, or was that your close?
Councilor, this wasn't my bill.
Sorry, Councilor Benton.
Sure, thanks. I'll make just a couple of statements and then close. I forgot to thank Jeanette Allen, who spoke earlier, and they're putting together this Friends of the CNP group. And I think they're going to really be a great overseer of this, along with the Open Space Board. And I believe Judy Kowalski was Colleen. She's the person I think I forgot on the tag. So, and Judy was very helpful because of her experience with the state parks and great knowledge of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. By the way, I hear they're swimming in money. So can we get some of that money? Anyway, so that was one thing. The other is in response to Mr. Ewing's public comment, the neighbor, and concerns about and not just Steve, but others who mentioned the tree farm. And I know for a fact that that Parks and Open Space is working on cleaning up the tree farm. But I think the most important thing to note is that will have its own site development plan that will go to the Planning Commission. So that will have a robust public process of its own of what that really looks like in the end. So it's important to note that. And yeah, I think other than that, I think we're ready to move on. I urge your support, councilors, that this get a recommendation of due pass. And then I do want to move in immediate action after that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Benton. Let's proceed with the vote for due pass. The motion made by Councilor Benton, Would you call the roll, please?
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson. Counselor Gibson, Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson. That passes on a 4-0 vote.
Thank you. And Counselor Benton, you have another motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, I move let me ask, does this require 5 votes or does this require a unanimous vote?
Madam Chair, committee, it would require a unanimous vote. It appears that Councillor Gibson would be categorized as excused at this point unless she comes back to the meeting. Oh, there she is. And so it requires a unanimous vote of those sitting and voting. And so she's back.
Sorry, I just stepped out of the room. Yes, my vote is a yes.
Thank you. Okay. And then so I'll move in immediate action.
Thank you. I'll second that. There's a motion and a second for immediate action. Is there any discussion? Let's call the roll on that one.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Borrego. Counselor Borrego,
I'm sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Counselor Gibson,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
And that passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you.
Counselor?
Counselor Borrego?
Madam Chair, I would like to ask for reconsideration of, I believe it was 270, the Planning Commission. I don't have the agenda right in front of me. Is that 270?
370.
370, thank you. I would
Environmental planning.
like to make a motion for immediate action.
Is that necessary? Or does it go, I mean, let me check on this. Okay, Chris? I'm sorry, Mr. Melendres, would you like to comment on that?
That's fine. So the confirmation of the committee's suggestion that the nominee be confirmed would be reported out on the 21st. However, if Councilor Borrego would like to move immediate action of that, she does not need to reconsider the motion so much as move that if that's an okay thing to do in your discretion, Madam Chair.
I have no problem with that if the other counselors don't. So Councilor Borrego, would you like to make a motion?
I would, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chris. I would like to make a motion for immediate action on R370.
E370.
E370.
Second.
Thank you.
There's a second on that from whom?
Councilor Pena.
From Councilor Pena. There's a motion and a second. Let's call the roll.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
That passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you, counselors. I believe that's the conclusion of our business this evening. Seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.